Hi guys, so if you're a remote student or if you were absent and missed this lab, you can use this video to make it up. So what we're doing in school today is we're taking a mixture of sand and salt and we're separating it. So in the purpose of the lab, what's the purpose of what's happening today? We're coming up with a procedure to separate the sand from the salt, and we want to end up with both the sand and salt in separate containers, so that we can actually weigh our sand and salt at the end and figure out what percentage of the mixture was made up of sand versus salt. Okay, so the first thing I actually needed to do was get some masses. So if you see on the smartboard behind me, the mass of this original sample is 7.15 grams. And I need to know what the mixture was to start with so I can figure out my percentages at the end. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do, if I think about like how sand and salt is different from one another, salt is soluble and sand isn't. So if I pour water in this mixture, the salt will dissolve, the sand won't, and then I can use a filter apparatus to separate those two things. So before I do anything, I need to weigh the dry filter paper. So that mass was 0.68 grams. Finally, I'm going to have salt water left in a beaker at the end, and I want to get rid of the water so I could evaporate it out. So what you want to do is you want to weigh the large beaker that the salt water is in, so that at the end, when you weigh it with salt in it, you can end up subtracting the two. So these are just things that I had to weigh before I started. Okay, I'm going to come back in 1 minute and show you the procedure. Okay, guys, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to, and this is where you should be filling in your procedure. We're going to be taking my sand and salt and pouring it into a beaker, and we're going to be putting some distilled water in it. And the reason why it should be distilled is because at the end, when we evaporate the water, we want to make sure that there's no other dissolved particles left in the container, just the salt. So here I am. I have my sand and salt and water all in one container, and I'm stirring. I want to make sure I get all the salt dissolved. Okay. So this is what a filtration apparatus looks like. Okay, so I'm going to take my water and I'm going to pour it through. And if you could see the dripping, guys, the sand is solid, so it's going to get stuck in the filter paper, and the salt water is coming through. Okay, so I'm just going to take some time to get all this out. And see how the sand is going to get stuck in the bottom of the beaker? So we want to make sure that we use our squirt bottle and we get all of that sand as much as possible into the filter paper, because again, we want to weigh it at the end. Okay. So I'm going to go get a squirt bottle while I'm waiting for this, and I will be right back. Okay, guys, so I have my squirt bottle of distilled water. You could see the funnel there, and I'm just going to take it and I'm going to make sure I get all the sand into my filter paper. Now, the filter paper is going to be wet, and we don't want to weigh it wet. So what I'm going to do after this filters is I'm going to take my filter paper and my sand and I'm going to put it in the oven and dry it. So this lab really kind of took a double period. There was a lot of waiting. My salt water, which is being collected in this beaker right here, I want to get rid of the water. So if I put this on a hot plate, the water has a lower boiling point, so it's going to start to bubble, and it's going to turn into a gas and leave. You guys can go take a mask break if you want. Not you, you have to stay here. So we're going to put this on a hot plate, and the water is going to evaporate and bubble out, and the salt will remain at the bottom. Okay, so as we're waiting for everybody's setup to start doing what it's doing, I will show you what that looks like. Here's the sand left in the filter paper. So that's what I'm going to go put in the oven right now. Okay. So now that my sand is in the oven and we're waiting for that to dry, I just wanted to show you the water on the hot plate so you can see the steam above the beaker. So right now my water is turning into a gas and it's leaving, it's going into the air. The process that you guys learned about in your note packet was called distillation, where you separate a mixture based on different boiling points. I wouldn't call this distillation because we're not collecting that steam and condensing it somewhere else. We're just letting it go up into the air because we don't need the water in this experiment. We only care about the mass of the salt. So in your procedure, you can just write that we put the salt water on a hot plate and we boiled out the water. So 3 steps. Added water to dissolve the salt, filtered out the sand and dried it, heated up the salt water to be left with only salt. Okay. When we come back, I will let you know what stuff weighs, and then I'll show you how to do your calculations. Okay, guys, so this is a whole class's worth, but here is our dried sand, if you can see that. So the sand is stuck in the filter paper. So instead of taking the sand out and doing multiple transfers, we're just going to weigh the sand on the filter paper, which is why we had our empty filter paper weight before. We wanted to be able to subtract that. This is what our salt is going to look like once we evaporate all the water out. Okay, so again, I'm not going to scrape this salt out of the beaker. I'm going to weigh this whole thing and then subtract the weight of the empty beaker from that. Okay, so let me give you guys that final data. Right. So my sand on my filter paper was 6.72 grams and my beaker of salt was 165.78 grams. Okay, so as far as my calculations go, for my sand, I want to take 6.72. And guys, for your calculations, you need to show all of your work and your answer should have units, okay? And I want to minus the dry filter paper, which was 0.68. So when I do that, I get grams. Okay, so that's how much sand was in my mixture. My salt, 165.78. 165.78, but I want to subtract the empty beaker from that, which is 164.68. And I get 1.10 grams for my salt. I'm going to show you how to do percent composition and percent error for the sand, and then you guys can do your salt calculations on your own and your analysis questions.
No, I know. And that's what he said.
For salt, percent composition, you want to take how much salt you had, divide it by the mass of the whole mixture. Bye guys, have a good day. Which is 7.15. Times it by 100. That's going to tell you the percentage of salt you had. The accepted value for salt is 15%. So in your percent error box, you want to do the measured value, which is what you got for the salt, minus the accepted value, which was 15, divided by the accepted value. And that's going to tell you how far off you are. The closer you are to 0, the better, the less error there was. So for sand, guys, you're going to do the same thing. you're going to take your mass of sand divided by the total times 100. And then for sand, the accepted value is 85. So you're going to compare what you got for number 2 to the 85%. Okay? Feel free to reach out to me with any questions that you have, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.